Hey everybody, Barry here again. It is turbo time. So, in my last update video, I decided that I'm going to go with this turbo. It's a 66mm Mac turbo made by Borg Warner. It's going to work really, really well on this one, and hey, it's already purple. So it's time to get this thing mounted up. It's not going to be mounted like this, it's going to be more straight. And what I'm going to be working with is this thing over here. This is a log manifold that I made for the Cadillac when I put a turbo on that. And I don't think I'm going to be using all of this. Obviously, I'm going to definitely use the flange. This is one that I made out of 2 pieces of quarter plate one time, welded it together. Here's the wastegate flange. It's a 44mm tile style wastegate, just an eBay one. I don't think I'm going to go around the back of the engine with my crossover pipe. Mainly because I want my exhaust to go down here, so I'd like to save as much of that space as possible. So I'm probably going to come down here and go in under and come up through into the flange. In order to see what kind of space I'm going to need, I'm going to have to bolt on the water pump, because I need to know where my heater core hoses are going to sit and in relation to this pulley right here, the tensioner pulley. So I'll get that bolted on and see what we got. Well, this sort of looks promising. Now, right now, the flange is hitting the alternator, but I've got a lot of room down back of here to get a 3-inch pipe for sure. Maybe a 4-inch if I can get it in there, but I don't mind reducing it a little bit. So what I'll have to do, because this won't line up where it's hitting the alternator, is cut the flange off about right here and then weld the pipe on. And what I'm kind of thinking about right now is having the pipe come down here, in under, and up through the frame rail right here. I'll lay the turbo in to see what kind of room I have. This is a bit of a snarl, but I think I'm getting the idea. The turbo is going to sit sort of like this, front to back. Lots of room for the exhaust to exit out here and go down there. The flange is going to be on the outside of the frame. Now I do have to move it ahead a little bit, or maybe chop this little piece out here. That's just part of the fender. And some of the inner fender well right here is going to have to be moved or deleted. Just enough room for the turbo outlet to sneak past the belts, which are going to go up around this way. So that's not going to hurt. Oil lines, of course, all this got to be clocked correctly. Not a lot of room. I don't know if I'll be able to change a bulb, maybe, without taking the turbo out or taking the headlight out. It's not a big deal, as long as the turbo sits in there. And this intake side here is going to be clocked whichever way. It might go down straight like this. It might go across the top. Who knows? As long as it fits. Even if I got to cut this off like on an angle like this, so it's not out on like this 60-degree angle, so it'll be almost more straight, I can clamp a hose on. And I think it's going to work really well with the flange on the outside, because my other exhaust can come down here, go in under the pulley here, right across up through the frame rail here. It'll be away from the rad, it'll be away from the intercooler piping. I think that's probably my best way of doing this. I thought about taking this frame rail out and doing some sort of a tubular frame rail, just like 1.5 inches, 2 inches around, to get rid of this big chunk here, but I don't think it's necessary. If it is, I will, but I'd rather not disturb any of it if I don't have to. I'm gonna go ahead right now, cut off the flange down here off this manifold so I can get that bolted in straight. I also brought in a bunch of piping and stuff. This got some nice bends in it here. S-bend, like about a 70 or 80 degree bend here. There's a merge here that I may be able to use, maybe. Or I'll make my own. And I've also got to cut this flange off. So this will be the turbo and the wastegate flange. Here's a nice straight clean cut. That's probably the nicest cut I've done actually. Usually it's all pretty circular, oval a little bit at the top, but a piece of pipe should weld really, really nice to this. This stuff welds awesome. It's cast steel, not cast iron, so I can weld it with regular wire and there's no issues with it. I did that on the log manifold right here, and I'll pull the wrap of it after when I need to cut this pipe off anyway, and just show you the welds on it. Actually, you can kind of see it here. They're not perfect, but they stuck really well. I had that on the Cadillac for, I don't know, a month or two. I suppose a month. And it was only supported by the flange right here. So all the weight was on the welds and these bolts, and it didn't break anything, and there was no leaks. So I know that the welding is fine with that. And I know that it'll be fine over on this one. Now that I got this one here cut off, I'm gonna go ahead and cut off this flange here. I'll take the wrap off and see how far. I'll go back as far as I can. I'm gonna save this log manifold and not chop it up because this could work really, really well on the rat rod. So I'm gonna keep that, and I'll leave probably an inch or so on the end of the pipe here just so I can weld it out later. This thing is ugly, but it worked really well. So try not to laugh too much. Like I said, it's ugly, but it worked. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt that on the turbo, and then set the turbo up where I think it should be, or where about whereabouts where it's gonna land, and then start making some piping from that passenger side manifold under the frame rail up to the turbo. When I get that mounted, or that pretty much done, then I can go ahead and do the driver's side across up to the turbo. If I get one manifold side mounted today, I'll be happy. If I can get one to come down here under the frame rail and then come up, I'll be happy with that. I also have to make some sort of a Y, whether I use this one, which I don't think I'm going to, or I make my own. It's not too bad because this thing is a fair sized pipe. So if I can get two, say 2.5s or 2 1/4s, whatever this is, to go up into this pipe, I'll be happy. Because my wastegate is up here right before it goes into the turbo. So it doesn't matter if it's a divided housing or not, it'll still use this one, say, manifold right here to evacuate the exhaust gases. Man, it's hard work trying to get that turbo to stay in one place with ratchet straps and hopes and dreams. I've got the turbo pretty much where it's going to be. I still got at least 2 inches worth of room from the hood, so I might bring it up a little bit more, try and get away from these pulleys and stuff and the rad hose right here. I don't know if this is going to come down or go across the top, but either way it wants to hit a coolant pipe, one right here or the outlet right here. I don't know, maybe if I can get it to go down through the fender right here, if I rotate it some more over this way, cut this flange off, bring it over that way, and then come down and under and across into the intercooler like right here somewhere. But I'll see. But it's looking good so far. So I took off the inner liner out of the hood. You can see that there's a pile of room here. Like, look, and I already jacked it up about 2 inches. I'm gonna get this turbo as high as I can. Mainly to get away from the coolant pipes, get the exhaust up higher so that the wastegate has lots of room. And I'll be able to pretty much level it out a lot easier. More room for the bend turn up into a straight so it won't be such a choppy merge. And what I'm going to do when I get the turbo sitting exactly where I want it, I'll put a few pieces of like ready rod or threaded rod and weld the flange itself to the frame rails, to the fender well, whatever, and then unbolt the turbo. The flange will be exactly where I need it and it'll be stationary there. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. while I had the turbo set up, I figured I'd have a look at where the radiator and intercooler are going to go. The intercooler has ports that come out the side and then go back toward the turbo and are wider than these brackets right here. So I'm going to have to cut some of the frame rail brackets out of these headlight supports. So I think I'm going to cut it around here, cut the flange off this frame rail back here, leave the rail itself, and then cut it around here. That'll have support for the rad support right here. There's bolts in here, and then I'll still have 1, 2 down here for the rad support. And the headlight support will still have one right here, and then the ones up on the fender. And of course, across the top with the hood latch and all that, so everything will still be triangulated and good and strong. I think it's going to work really well. My out pipe on the turbo is either going to come down through here somewhere. It looks like it's going to be fairly level with the outlet on the intercooler, so it might only be a very short piece, and then the air will come across, come out here, right up into the throttle body. I'm going to go ahead now and get the turbo mounted. I'm happy with where it is right now. It's about 1 inch or half an inch from top of the hood, and that's going to work really well. I will put the hood blanket back on, I think. I think I'm going to hear the turbo spool anyway. It's going to be loud. I was going to take the hood damper or the hood blanket thing off so it'd be extra loud, but it's an aluminum hood and I'm afraid the heat from the turbo is going to warp it up or make the paint scale off, that kind of thing. I don't really want that. I did just find a scratch on this thing. That's kind of depressing. I must have been moving something along and scratched it. It's right down to the primer, which I'm not really excited about. But I guess I'll have to paint it. Also, there's a bubble on the hood, like right up here somewhere, where some corrosion got in there, so I'll paint that too. I'll see if I can get a can of touch-up paint and go over it. It's funny because the rat rod has no paint on it at all, and I'm not concerned. Like, I'm not painting the rat rod whatsoever. But for the first time since Cass and I bought this like 3 years ago, I care what it looks like. I want it to look good. Is that a problem? Cass is gonna have a sticker made for the van saying, "I used to be cool." So I guess that's what I get for buying a van. I would like to get it straighter this way, but where the turbo outlet is right here, I think that's gonna work well. It's away from all the belts. Lots of room for this hose to come out and go across to the rad. Sort of enough room. Yeah, it's enough room for that. Just go straight down to the bottom of the rad pipe right here. Heater core hoses are right here. They come out fine. They'll be able to go across to back where, right there. That's where they go. It's a little bit dark, I apologize. I think that's about the best place for this thing to go. I'll pop the hood off of it again because it doesn't need to be there anymore, and start welding some brackets on to my flange. Doesn't look like much right now, but this is exactly where the turbo needs to sit. Looks kind of ugly, but this stuff, these bars and stuff, they're not going to be here when the turbo is mounted. This is just so I don't have to leave the turbo in the van, have it all squared up, mounted, and try and weld pipes to it while it's moving around and stuff. It's just not going to work. Also, I had to kind of wiggle it around before I welded these in because my wastegate exit is right behind the headlight. The way I have it set up now is I got about a ½ inch to be, well, between the wastegate and the headlight. So if I need to change the headlight bulb, probably gonna have to take the wastegate off. But it's a tight fit. It's what I expected with doing this job, so it's not a serious thing. I'm gonna go ahead now and make the merge. I probably could have done it before I welded all this on, but I do know the diameter of the inlet. So I'll grab another piece of pipe, probably a couple inches long, and make my merge into that. When I get that made, I'll slip it up into my flange and then weld it around. As you can see here, it's pretty much rested right on this pinch weld for frame rail. So I'll just mark it and cut it around, and I'll have about a 1/2 inch for my pipe to actually weld on right here. It's just where it goes up to a bigger size that is striking. So that's not serious. I was trying to decide what size pipe I was going to use. This is the size that goes up into the turbo flange. And also, this is like the perfect size for the manifold. So I'm gonna have to figure out how to get to this size of pipe to go into this size of pipe. This should be exciting. What I need to do is have one pipe coming straight up into the flange, and the other pipe is gonna come in at an angle and merge like this. If I had both pipes come in on angles like this, obviously not that rough, but if I had both pipes come in at an angle, then one would go back too far and hit the wheel well and be out where the tire is. So I'd like to have one at least straight and the other one coming up in. I'm gonna go ahead and put her on time lapse and see if I can get the merge made and see how far we get today. Well, I got this piece cut out. That's going to be the straight up part of the merge. And I tried to make the other part of the merge and failed horribly. Bit of a gap. So I need to measure again, because obviously I did it wrong the first time. It is going to be a pretty good idea. One straight, one comes off at a pretty decent angle. It's going to be a good idea when I get it done. As of right now, not going to work that well. Even if I do put it down so that it contacts right here, I got a massive gap there. So it's only 6 inches of pipe. I'll try it again. That took entirely too long to make. That thing kicked my butt. I got it made. I did it with this piece of pipe first, and it was nowhere near what it needed to be. But it looks like a merge. Got a couple little gaps I gotta fill in, smack that down a little bit, weld it. But I think it's gonna look okay. I'm gonna mock it up now on the flange, see what it fits like. That actually looks kind of cool for how long it took me. I should have watched a video or something at first. Some of the wheel well might still have to come out of it because it's basically right on it. But it fits up into the flange nicely. Unless, I suppose I could make it turn at the top of this one. So that way the merge would come down at an angle sort of like that. But then it limits this pipe from going cleanly in under here. So I'd say I'll probably have to cut some of that wheel well out, which is not really a big deal. Doesn't matter. And both pipes will be able to come down and under this frame rail, no problem. Good stuff. I got this thing tacked together in a few spots, enough to do a mock-up. Next thing I'm gonna do is bolt this manifold onto the cylinder head. lay my merge in place down here and see sort of how I'm going to have to bend the pipes. Looks like it'll be a pretty well straight shot up into the first pipe. My only issue now is that it's pointing basically right at the back of the alternator. So I'm gonna have to make my pipe turn immediately and go down straight. It's not a major deal because I'm gonna wrap the manifolds with this header wrap anyway. This stuff is wicked. I had this on the Cadillac, and I could go out on the highway, do pulls, come home and lay my hands right on the header wrap, and it's not hot at all, like lukewarm. So it's not gonna melt back the alternator or anything. I just wanna get as far away from it as I can. So I may cut this more straight across here and then go straight down, or I may just turn. Alrighty, I'm pretty much out of time today. So I'm gonna finish her up here. I have the flange bolted into place, the turbo mocked up, the merge made, which took entirely too much time. I think it was like 2 hours or something messing with that. This is why this stuff takes a lot longer in person and in this style of video than it does seeing it on Power Block, where in a half hour, the guy's like, look, I got my truck jacked up and there's 44s on it. And, real life. Anyway, so I'm all done for tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to put the manifold on, see if I can get the pipe to come down and under the frame rail and up into the merge. And then I'll work on doing the driver's side. It's gonna come together really quick. I'm gonna have to bolt the rad in, probably put a hose or something on it just to make sure that I'm gonna clear everything there. Bolt the intercooler in, trim up the bumper, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I've got a lot of work to do. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.